NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg meets with U.S. Defense Chief at the Pentagon, vows to strengthen support for Ukraine.
A children's hospital was hit and at least 31 people have been killed in a Russian missile attack across Ukraine.
European ambassadors to meet on Wednesday after Viktor Orban visits Russia and China.
As France faces a hung parliament, lawmakers attempt to solve the puzzle of coalition.
Outgoing NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has met with U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin at the Pentagon. The meeting on Monday came as this week's three-day summit marking the 75th anniversary of the NATO alliance begins. Both defense chiefs vowed to further build upon continued progress amid unprecedented challenges as Russia continues its war in Ukraine.
In Ukraine, Russia continues its brutal war. Only today we have seen horrendous missile attacks against Ukrainian cities, killing innocent civilians, including children. I condemn these heinous attacks. At the summit, we'll make decisions to further strengthen our support to Ukraine, and Russia must understand that they're not able to wait those out. They need to sit down and accept a solution where Ukraine prevails as a sovereign independent nation.
The summit is the last for Jens Stoltenberg, who will step down later this year after a decade in the role. While the NATO chief shows off some of his own achievements, Washington remains troubled. Concerns are mounting at home and abroad over a potential NATO skeptic Trump presidency.
At least 31 people have been killed in one of Russia's largest barrage of missile attacks over Ukraine in the past few months. The strike wounded more than 153 people and largely destroyed the main children's hospital in Kyiv, which Ukrainian officials have defined as a war crime. Russia claims the damage to the hospital happened following a failure from a Ukrainian defense system. But Zelensky firmly rejects Moscow's allegations.
Вже зараз, якщо ти чув сигнали, що це працювало українське ППО, що це українське ППО, а не їх розрахований удар. Я вдячний всім українцям, які почали викладувати відео, де видно, конкретно видно не частину тієї чи іншої ракети, а прямий ракетний удар, яким було поранено і вбито багато людей в Україні сьогодні.
Zelensky said he will be calling for a UN Security Council emergency meeting, whilst the spokesperson for the UN Secretary General strongly condemned the attack. More than 40 missiles of different types, including hypersonic Kinzels, reportedly hit apartment buildings and public infrastructure across 5 different cities.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has arrived in Beijing on Monday in a surprise visit. His trip follows an unexpected visit to Russia last week, where he proposed that Ukraine should consider agreeing to an immediate ceasefire with Russia. Diplomatic sources say that Orban has caused concerns over deliberately displaying the logo of the EU rotating presidency in his communications, instead of making it clear that he is representing his own country. The Hungarian Prime Minister is widely seen as having a close relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
What we see is a strategic campaign to ridicule the European Union and to demonstrate that actually Prime Minister Orban can go on with all of these uncoordinated steps, which are clear violations of joint and agreed EU positions, and does not need to fear any negative consequences. Because he knows that with this, on the one hand, he also expands his future future space to maneuver and future political autonomy. but also that seriously undermines the perception of the EU foreign policy among key partners.
Experts say that despite Orban's efforts, they are unlikely to have any tangible impact on a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine.
I think Prime Minister Orban is the only European head of state or government who is ready to talk to Mr. Putin and actually violate the basic principle jointly established by EU member states, that there is no talk about Ukraine without Ukraine. So it's not the ability, it's just the readiness. I don't see any positive contribution of this sort of traveling diplomacy to the solution of the war in Ukraine, because that would require the involvement of all partners.
European ambassadors will discuss Orban's recent visits in a meeting on Wednesday.
France's legislative elections have resulted in a hung parliament, with the National Assembly divided into 3 distinct blocs. Although the leftist coalition, the New Popular Front, came out on top with 182 seats, it does not have an absolute majority. Therefore, no clear figure has emerged as a possible prime minister. Voters are also divided on who should become prime minister, but some say coalition might be the way forward.
Il y a moyen justement de gouverner tous ensemble, puisqu'en fait, quand même dans le camp présidentiel, il y a quand même pas mal de gens qui sont issus de, on va dire, de l'ancienne gauche, la gauche socialiste, une gauche plus traditionnelle.
But Sylvain Maillard, former president of the Renaissance Group in the National Assembly, suggests it will take several weeks to form a majority.
Juste, ça va prendre forcément du temps pour que nous puissions avoir une base programmatique. C'est pas la culture de la France, de construire des coalitions, des alliances. Et donc ça va prendre un peu plus de temps. Mais quand je regarde chez nos partenaires européens, ça prend plusieurs semaines. Donc voilà, on est parti pour probablement plusieurs semaines de discussion.
France faces potential political paralysis after none of the alliances won an absolute majority of 289 seats needed to form a government on Sunday. The big question now is who will govern France and what are some of the possible outcomes? Since the left-wing alliance, the New Popular Front, or NFP, came first in the French legislative elections, they logically should nominate a prime minister. But there have been many internal squabbles within the coalition on who should lead the government. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the leader of the France Unbowed Party, or LFI, has repeatedly stated that he is ready to take on the role.
La figure de Mélenchon pèse très lourd tout en étant très rebutoire. Elle repousse énormément d'électeurs. Donc ça va poser un sérieux problème. La gauche, au jour d'aujourd'hui, la gauche et les écologistes n'ont pas de Premier ministre naturel qui pourrait s'imposer. Ça, c'est le premier problème qu'ils ont. Et donc, certains disent ça pourrait être Mélenchon et beaucoup disent ça ne peut pas être Mélenchon.
A minority government with less than 289 seats would also mean the left-wing coalition would have to live under the constant threat of a no-confidence vote from other parties. Emmanuel Macron could try to build a fragile coalition with moderates from the left and right-wing parties. But this option seems less probable after multiple party leaders from, for example, the France Unbowed or from Macron's presidential camp have expressed outright opposition to forging certain alliances.
On est en effet dans une situation de relative paralysée politique. On peut construire évidemment une coalition, elle peut avoir lieu, mais ce sera une coalition forcément baroque et fragile. Entre les Verts et les LR, il y a quand même un delta qui est extrêmement important d'un point de vue idéologique et on aurait beaucoup de petits groupes politiques avec potentiellement une perspective de nouvelles élections dans un an, ce qui va conduire tous les partis à ne pas vraiment faire de cadeaux à leurs partenaires.
Another option for Macron would be to appoint a technocratic government with ministers of no particular political affiliation to handle current affairs. However, some experts reject that this idea could even be an option.
A technocratic government always makes political choice. Just take the budget, for instance. The budget is political choice. And, in September, you will have, of course, a bylaw on public finance, which is basically the budget. And there will be some choices to give more, let's say, to education, justice, or defense, or foreign affairs, or whatever. I mean, that's basically choice. So there is no technocratical government per se, we have certainly to dissipate this kind of illusion.
The first session of the National Assembly will be held on July 18th.
Almost 30 bears from the Transfăgărașan mountain will be relocated to the Zarnești sanctuary. The authorities' decision comes after a Euronews Romania report last week. Euronews Romania correspondent Maya Bondic reports.
În urmă cu o săptămână eram aici, în zona Transfăgărășan, Vidraru, și pe întreg traseul am văzut urși cerșind mâncare la stradă. Acum ne-am reîntors în teren cu ministrul mediului pentru a vedea ce soluții există pentru acești urși.
The Minister for the Environment told Euronews that he will issue a ministerial order or even change the legislation to solve the dangerous situation in the area.
Împreună cu administratorul drumului național, respectiv CNAIR-ul, probabil că am putea să aducem la cunoștința oamenilor că hrănirea urșilor este interzisă, că hrănirea urșilor poate fi sancționată cu amendă.
Care mocnește și, Doamne ferește, să se întâmple o nenorocire. Împreună cu Comisia și cu reprezentanții instituțiilor care fac parte din Comisie, am ajuns la concluzia cu toții că ei trebuie relocați.
Local authorities have identified 26 bears roaming the streets. Due to feeding by tourists, the bears are no longer used to foraging for themselves. The food offered by tourists on the street seems to be their favorite.